Your way every other Friday from UBC studios here in the heart of Kampala. From wherever you are following this program, we appreciate your time for the next 1 hour that we are going to be together looking at the issues that concern the people of Africa, those who are living in this beautiful continent of Africa, those who are living outside of it. And in studio, I'm joined by your usual brother, Chief Ndugu Awich. You are welcome, Ndugu. Today we are not able to have Ndugu Rugarama, who has disappeared within Kampala streets, but we shall be able to track him down. Next week we'll be with him here. Now, the other week we were not here because there was a live program that was sponsored by Judiciary discussing about many other important issues about the legal issues in this country and how we are set on that path. Today we'll be looking at a continuation of what we had last week. The other week was to do with education. We were looking at religion, and from religion came with education. And we have seen that this education came with a lot of benefits, but also has come with a lot of the default that was built within the education system that was given to Africans. And sometimes we wonder whether that education was what's supposed to be taught to Africans, or whether Africans didn't have the education system that could have been promoted to like other countries of the world. That we already had innovations, we had science, we were moving on very well with our industries, but somehow this colonization that came with religion and the introduction of the new education came with a lot of problems that affected us until up to date. So we definitely looked at education also sometimes because of the historical default we are talking about affecting the social cohesion of the people of Africa, that instead of this education and religion per se bring us together, has also created a number of divisions. And today we'll be looking at majorly two societies. One of the societies we'll be looking at is the education in Nigeria, because Nigeria is one of our the continent's biggest economies and has a lot of people who have gone to school. And when you look at most of the agencies of the world, including the UN, including the World Health Organization, most of those World Bank, we have very many people coming from that country of Nigeria. The other country is Egypt, where we have seen also a number of discussions going on, whether one is from the south of the Africa, and the other one is from the north of Africa. But we are trying to compare these two countries to see how education has affected the thinking formats of the individuals that are in these two countries, and whether education has performed as expected. Because we expect that one person is educated, there's also this common saying you are talking like a person who has not gone to school, because there is some expectation of a person when he has gone to school how he should behave as compared to one who has not gone to school. So Ndugu Awich, first welcome the program.
Thank you
and
so
welcome
much.
back from the elections of the office bearers you call the mighty party of the movement. It was a very hectic exercise, and congratulations.
Thank you so much. My comment about that is that it is an ongoing process. It's not a one-off.
Sure.
It is an ongoing process, possibly ending with a sub, not even a full, a sub of it ending with election of the president next year.
Okay.
Why I'm saying a sub is that because even after that, which after the election, which I presume or I know my candidate will win, because we have been doing surveys, we have been doing research, following our implementation of the programs and strategies. So we shall win.
Okay.
Now, why I'm saying it is sub is because after that we have to go to implementation. But for today, we are taking the required signatures to the Electoral Commission. And I can assure you we have surplus signatures. Where we need 100, we have got nearly all the districts in the country. We have a surplus of over 15,000 signatures.
15,000?
No, actually, a district has 14,000 excess. I was talking of only one topic, like you find, say, Bulisa, 9,000 extra, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
But today, we are taking our signatures to the Electoral Commission to meet the constitutional and the legal requirements of a candidate for purposes of nomination.
Okay. So then the exercise goes on until, because
we
now
have
you
to get into a campaign, we have to get into voting, then when we win, the other structures are elected, then we have to set ourselves the task that we would have marketed our manifesto to the people, and people would have voted, and therefore we would by then have a social contract between the people and the party, and that you, NRM, you have told us in your manifesto this, and it is on this basis that we have voted for you, therefore show us what you can do. And we shall form a government. I remember a government is formed by the winning party.
Okay.
And you know, comrades, some people think that a government is stronger than the party, but it is a party which gives birth to the government. Because if we don't win election, we can't form a government. I can loosely say that if we don't win election, Utafire wouldn't be a Minister of Internal Affairs.
Okay.
So meaning therefore the formation of the government will now push us to the task of implementing the social contract that we would have had with the people.
With the Ugandans. Now, for the benefit of Ugandans, but also those who are out of the country, because we have to be on this one briefly, but it's also important that we saw a lot of, I could say, discontent voices from within your elections, because Movement Party is now one of the oldest parties in the region, now other than the CCM. So when we saw what was happening in your elections, it happens that many people have come out very discontented. You can tell the Ugandans and the people who are watching us now. How do we think to address this?
Two things. You have mentioned the age of the party, and you have also mentioned the discontent. I could mention something about the party. Legally meaning the registration of NRM as a political organization as a different age. But remember, some of us, especially those of us who are in NRA, felt that the revolutionary spirit in this organization called NRM should not be lost. Therefore, we have an age before.
Yeah, before the party.
Before the party legal entity. So we can still take in the legal entity that would be, when was the first multi-party election? In 2001?
Yes.
Yes. In 2001, if you take that as the first, that shows we are already reaching about 20 plus. So we are old indeed in the region. So, but I want to take our age, but also into consideration that some of us were boxed into this legality. Me personally, I was boxed into.
What would have been the option?
The option would have been that we can develop an African governance system, which you could have as a movement system, which we thought was working, which was democratic and open, because it was not exclusive. And that is why I keep saying that even issues like impeachment in parliament would go, because you wouldn't have us against them. It was all of us. And that's why President Museveni said one time that, remember, when you go to multi-party, if you're a permanent secretary or a commissioner, should you go and contest for election, then you don't come back because you have already shown your partisan status. These are things which were not in the original movement. And the movement was good until some people said they are being conscripted. Into the political. Like the Cecilia Ogwal group, that you are conscripting us. That is why, comrade, you heard something like, for us. I think you heard those phrases, for us in the movement, for us. Exactly, and people took it like a negativity. No, the for us was actually a reaction to people who are saying, we are not with you.
We are forced into
So those of us who remain said, well, if you're not with us, but for us. Now, the same people took the for us as a negative thing, and yet for us was a reaction. It was not a proaction.
Yes.
Anyway, that was that. So the discontent is that, as you know, we are developing our internal democratic system.
Sure.
And the system, internal democratic system as a party, remember the core point was lining up. And along this lining up, we also meet challenging our internal governance system of issues of money, issues of finance, issues of vote bribing. So we could have had challenges in the internal governance, but we were developing it. We had also put in a remedy system like tribunal. We thought that even when we try and implement our internal democratic system, there could be challenges. And therefore we thought that with these democratic challenges, can we put a remedy procedures like tribunal? Tribunal was put in place. So we exhausted all those, and we are yet now to see, with all these remedies exhausted, how far have we gone with it. Okay. So my message to those who are discontent is that please agree with the party position. We had hoped that we would have a reconciliation team. We had thought that it would be headed by Right Honorable Dr. Rakana Rugunda, so that you have had 3 phases. Phase 1 is the election with its challenges. Phase 2 is the tribunal with its challenges. Then phase 3 is the reconciliation. So we thought this would make the party move forward.
I think we should have some time here and we talk about these political things because it concerns everyone, especially when it comes to administration and the political systems and the implications therein, so that we understand each other. And I think in this discussion, I will also invite some people from the opposition to come and we'll have some of this open discussion, because at the end of it, what happens here affects there. And what happens in one political party, of course, definitely affects the other political parties, but also other Ugandans. Now, we are going back to our topics, and before we go that, I think we also need to tell our viewers who have been following this program that about a few weeks ago, we had our comrade here, Nduku Kojo. He was appearing in one of these shows, and he was very passionate, especially when it came to African, he was calling it African spirituality. Apparently, along this week, he collapsed and died, so we lost him.
Do you have his photo?
Yeah, we have his photo. I think this people will want at some point show us that photo of Mr. Kojo. And Mr. Kojo is from Nigeria, from Ghana, but has been in Uganda, was meant to understand that has also been doing some consultancy with the Wealth Creation Department. And I was told the daughter arrived in the country yesterday, and I think his body will be flown back to Ghana for burial, and the government of Uganda will be supporting the family in doing all that. We shall miss him, and our continuous engagement. He had pushed for the African passport, that we need to have, as Africans, African passport, because we have now East African passport, South Africa, the COMESA, the what. But for him, he was, and I also believe that we need the passport of Africa, so that we are identified as people of Africa. it ushers us back into the discussion we're having today, the issue of education. We now have voices coming up to say that our education is void, is a white elephant. We have so many people educated, but they are not able to deliver from what they have started. That is a debate, of course, because we already have also people on this continent who are doing very well academically across even in other countries. Now, I wanted us to look at the country like Nigeria. With your experience and both as a political activist, but also as a professional who has worked beyond the borders of this country. Do you think that part of the problems of Nigeria are as a result of education?
Well, maybe I will have to make a little comment about education per se. Because at that level you may force me into defining what is education itself, because before we indulge into the problems, whether problems or not, what is education? Because if you are indulging into a problem of something, you must know what is that something that we are assessing. And therefore I will want to throw a light on education per se. Education could have had its roots. It is an English word, as we say, but it has its roots in some Latin concepts. To gain knowledge or to remove ignorance. Gaining knowledge, removing ignorance, from a not knowing to a knowing. From a status of not knowing to a status of knowing. And that is why some epistemology, the study of roots of knowledge, for example, another students of knowledge will tell you what you call theory of knowledge. How does knowledge come? How does a non-knowing person become a knowing person? And therefore, this will show you that education is a societal aspect. It is not a question of, say, it is for the white, and then the other black don't have. And that is why in some situations we used to be asked, who was your first teacher? And the answer would always be your parents or your mother. Because it is your mother or your father who brings you from a knowing to a not knowing. By the time you go to school, the formal schooling, your mother and father would have already brought you from a knowing to a non-knowing. And therefore, in all societies, whether Africa or Europe, as societies developed, as society got into production jointly as a society, many things developed, including speech. Remember, there's a scientific thinking which thinks that man, it is labor which made man. As man got into labor, yes, including in the arms. The hands were original like that of a monkey. But as we got into production, our hands changed. And because we're in production, socially, even the knowledge that you keep banging this stone, and you know which stone is hard, which one is soft, it developed our brain. So even the brain developed in the process of labor. And the voice, originally we were murmuring things like monkeys. Eventually the voice developed, and we developed the larynx, the usual voice to speech. And the ear also became sharpened, and the eyes. So labor made man. Now, one important aspect of education is writing. Societies now started to form into writings, and that is why sophisticated societies, including Africa, got writing. Yeah. You can talk of the writing in Egypt and Ethiopia. Those are the only countries on record in Africa which, before the intervention of of Europeans had clear writing process. Also West Africa, there was a university. Okay. But the writings that is to date sustained, the Egyptian writing and the Ethiopian writing. Remember, Ethiopians up to today, they have their own writing, not the alphabet.
They are on a
yes,
system.
not the alphabet. Yeah. So this was a result of now starting to, and the writing helped in codification of knowledge. Codification of knowledge means, to codify means you are putting it down. It is what is acceptable, practicable in society, but you are simply putting it down. You're putting it down. And that helped to build education now, to build knowledge, because you now don't have to forget. In the past, you discuss, you talk about it, and you forget it. But when writing came, now the storage of knowledge started to be acquired. Because you can only acquire knowledge storing it when you are writing it down. So education then started it. So basically this is a big topic what we could go into detail, but that is to explain what education is, the source of education, how society developed to cope up with education, how it captured it into a writing and now became formal. Remember that even the relation with theory of knowledge is that man practices it. And when man practices it, especially in the process of production, and then man writes it down. Yeah. So there's a dialectical relationship between theory and knowledge. Theory develops, theory and practice, sorry. Mm-hmm. Theory makes a practice. You do practice, and then what you see in practice, make it into theory. But you also use the theory to develop the practice. For example, for you to write about germination of a seed, you must have planted and seen it germinating. You must have planted the seed, seen the seed germinating, and then you write theory about the germination of seed. Now, about Nigeria, I don't know to what scope we could
actually, even before you got that, you are raising the issues here of education, the practicability and the theoretical part of education. Because in Africa, a lot of the history, a lot of the knowledge is not documented. And yet this knowledge is what could have been promoted, because we, in most cases, we have been saying the West came and they disorganized us, they took away all what we need, all our knowledge was taken. That is true. But did we have it on record? Of course, you have brought up the issue of the Egyptians and the Ethiopians. Up to now, they still maintain a lot of their own education. But now, when we look at what happens then is that the education that we're having today is having some of the issues that are either implanted in it or removed from it. But I think we'll have that discussion on another day. But when we're looking at Nigeria, we're looking at the country Nigeria. You remember from the historical perspective, not recently, not even a long time, Nigeria has had these issues of conflict. And this conflict started way back. Even Nigeria was formed as a state. You remember the Biafra, the Biafra War? And the conflict that have been existing between the north, which is dominant Islamic, and the south, which is dominant Christian. So we are looking at this as religion and education versus what is happening now, especially on the African continent. Whether, because even religion is supposed to bring people together, this is the Muslim and the Christians when we are talking about the Nigerian experience. But that is now the dividing factor in Nigeria. So we are trying to analyze and see, could have been there a better way of introducing education in this particular community, or the religion itself found already a divided society of the Nigerians?
First of all, I don't believe that human conflict or societal conflict can be as a result of issues which, in my opinion, is non-materialistic, or what you could call idealistic versus materialistic source of conflict.
Okay.
I have known of conflicts in Nigeria. You have talked of Biafra. There was recently the Ogoni, which led to the execution of their leader.
Sarawewa.
Yes. You have also had tribal sentiments in Nigeria. I have met Nigerians around the world. Apart from national events like football or other representation, inside them, they are deep divided. I can even give the example. You can't compare the cohesion of Tanzania with the cohesion of Nigeria.
Sure.
The non-cohesion in Nigeria is visible. And the non-cohesion of Tanzanians is not visible. That is to say, it may be there, but it is not visible. Therefore, I don't believe that conflicts are out of those two, and I will try to explain. Take, for example, if you say you want to illustrate this, comrade, take a border position like Liatonde, or take a border position like Agago and Utuke, or any other border position. Start with Liatonde. It is unheard of, or it is not believable that a Muganda in Liatonde would fight with a Minyankole because the other one is merely Minyankole. Never. Conflicts among societies are material. That conflict in Liatonde could be over land for grazing cows, water for cows for drinking, or land for cultivation. The other one wants to plant matoke, the other one wants for keeping cows. Now, this materialistic source of conflict is always iced up to say it is tribe, to say it is religion, to say it is something idealistic. And the same thing all over, whether it is in the Jewish conflict with the Arabs, whether it is a conflict where the underlying factor is always material conflicts. So if the Langis between the border of Agago and Utuke are fighting, it's not because the other one say, okay, I'm a Langi, I want to fight a Choli. Or I'm a Mutor, I want to fight a... You know there's a conflict in Apa between the Mahdi and the Choli towards the Jumani. So somebody would superficially say, in Apa, the Cholis are fighting the Mahdi. No. And why? When you ask why are they fighting, that because the other one is another tribe, the other is another tribe, forget. I can assure you, in Liatonde, if you had a Mnyankole and a Muganda of economic investment joint interest, you would even love the Muganda is investing with than a Mnyankole who wants to take his material interest.
Yeah,
therefore, conflict by conflict in Nigeria, including the recent, remember there was oil. And the oil community, including Ogoni, Sarawiwa, for example, Ken Sarawiwa was leading a community which was saying, one, you are polluting our area with the fuel, with the oil. Two, this exploitation of oil, the community is not benefiting. And therefore, Ken Sarawiwa was kind of leading a resistance, an uprising against the protection of the interests of the Ogoni people in an area where they see that their oil was being exploited. They are not. So the state didn't manage. And that is why in Uganda, for example, we are alive and conscious to it. To the fact that you can see the legal management, the constitutional provision, first of all, that what is below the soil is for the country. And you have laws there too. Otherwise, a Bulisa case would easily have been a Ken Sarawiwa. And then you say Banyoro are fighting this. No.
Yeah, because when you look at it, sometimes we also, it comes with the issues of marginalization. where you find one society has taken on a stronger position, either because of their numbers against the few who are oppressed. We will look at that when it comes to Egypt. But for the purpose of Nigeria, when you look at the segregation of the religious grouping, you find that the dominant north, the northern Nigeria, dominant Islamic north, but also the dominant Christian south. And when you look at these numbers, they're almost equal. I think the Muslims about 41%, and the Christians are about 46%. So they are not. The Muslims actually about 51, and Christians are about 46 of the other religions. But when you look at that, then you will think that these are balanced forces. There will be no marginalization in leadership. Now, when that goes into politics, is where the problem is compounded.
You see, again, if you look at that as a religious affiliation, it's not a religion as an end. It is a religion for economic pursuit. It's not that I am a Muslim and therefore I want influential position. It is, I am a Muslim, I want influential position so that I control the economic. You know, it is not a religion as an end in itself. It is a religion to gain economic. So in the end analysis, it is the materiality. If, for example, it was a religion ending in the mosque and you are praying in your mosque, it would let you do your things. But where you are using the religious position to place yourself into offices of responsibility, into offices which control resources, it's what brings the problem. So it's still, if somebody looks at it as a religion and therefore a conflict of religion per se, you miss the point. And if you try to treat it at that point, I mean, it will be like somebody has malaria, okay? But he's having a running nose. Now you keep on treating the running nose without treating the malaria. You won't end the running nose. It is until you treat the malaria, the nose will dry. Now if you keep looking at it as a religion domination and not economic, it will continue. But if you address the economic imbalance and leave the religion hanging, nobody will even care about your religion. Even if you have everybody a Muslim, and the Christians will look for. So it means therefore that it will be a misdiagnosis if we kept saying a religion is the problem. Okay? It will be a misdiagnosis. It will be like you are thinking the problem is nose running when the problem is actually the malaria. Because even those who are flagging religion, for example, he's saying, make me a permanent secretary because I'm a Muslim. Okay? I am a Muslim. Make me an accountant. It's not that he wants the Muslim status to be in the office. He wants to be there so that he controls resources. Therefore, the remedy is in how you sit back and you design the management of the economic resources. Completely not bothered about the religion. Once you control that, and as I keep saying, to every problem there's a solution. You can actually design the governance system and the economic control of resources. And even when religion comes on top, it will be inconsequential. But here is somebody who is saying, you know, I am Muhammad so-and-so. Make me an accountant. Why do you mix the two if it was not of material interest? Why are you mixing the religion plus the position? So, it needs to be addressed from that position.
So, because one thing that we are looking at two things, the imbalances, these are historical imbalances in any society of Africa, where you find that certain religions especially when we are looking at now the Abrahamic religions, we are talking about Christianity and Islam, that there was this type of education which is being given to Africans. We may say it was not the best education, but that was the education that we definitely inherited from the colonizers. Because we had our own education, like you did put it, there is that education which was practical, where theory would answer in the practice. Now the education of Africa was the practice answering into theory. It was a flip, that people were doing things, and after seeing that things practically working, they would need theorize about it, how to improve. This is what happened. And that we also saw that Africa also, the education was not written. Each particular society, ethnic grouping had their own way. Even when it came to industrialization, there were those who were making spears, but spears from one society could be different from the other society. But now when it comes to education and religion, and especially when you are looking at these two communities of the Nigerians and the Egypt, you realize that the Muslims seem to be the majority in these areas. In fact, in Egypt it's worse, because the Christians, the Coptic Christians, and of course other small religions are just 10% of the population of Egypt. But the violence against them is increasing every other time. We're talking about resources. Do you think that the Arabs, of the Arabic, because they're all of the Arabic origin, of course the Coptics they call themselves the original people of Egypt, and the same to the Nigerians. But where education has been well established, we have seen the conflicts seem to be less. But where people have not been well educated, we have had issues. Now when you look at that, even back here in Uganda, you realize that from the historical perspective, Muslims were not going to school, or the formal schools, because they had their own schools where they were going for their education, but that also created a problem that eventually they will find themselves marginalized. So marginalization, you are relating it to resources, because if you are marginalized, then it's likely you are not accessing the resources. But can't that also be addressed in a system where you find that the marginalization does not only stop at resources, the marginalization can also be at even other aspects of community?
You have raised so many issues that I was taking note of. Maybe you will save me in future by raising bit by bit, because it becomes challenging for me to respond to them. Otherwise, we let many flow.
Yeah, we're looking at just at marginalization, so, especially.
No, but you first raised the issue of the Abraham education. So you just don't mention that and you let the viewers not understand. I don't think it is even Abraham education. It is safer for me to say the Mosaic education. Why? Because Moses is the one who wrote the first 5 books of the Bible. Genesis, Exodus, what that. So if we're talking of that education, the literature that we have from that education is Mosaic literature, the literature of Moses, because Moses wrote the first 5 books of the Bible. And it is these first 5 books of the Bible which influence our education. For example, how was the world created? Many world theories think Moses was right by saying, on the first day God woke up, declared this, second day God did this, third day. So that education is actually Mosaic education. It is education by Moses, because Moses wrote the first 5 books of the Old Testament. Now, that is versus, therefore, to other scientific outlook. For example, family, take for example family. Moses believed the first family was Adam and Eve. And even in the Bible, it talks about the genealogy. The genealogy from so and so produced this and this produced this produced this, and so on and so forth. That is Moses' view of a family. But we have schools of thought which says human beings originated in East Africa, in the Vijayan George, and that we have a very elaborate theory of saying the origin of the family, private property, and the state. How did the origin come up? How did the family come up? How did private property, my home, my cow, or my goat, how did it come up? And the state, the police, the courts of law, and all this, how did it come up? So you have these verses of education. That is education. You have the education of the Moses in the first 5 books of the Bible. And somebody saying, no, human society developed as a family. For example, you may wish to know that some people think that at first we had a group of society where there was everybody was a wife to everybody. And then we have also had a system where there was polyandry. Polyandry, for example, is the wives who were the controller. And the wife would have 5 men or 10 men. When they're chasing a man, it was called dehorning, that the man has been dehorned. And then you also had a situation where we came to polygamy. Polygamy, where you have a man and a woman too, okay? And then you have now single marriage. So, as opposed to Mosaic literature of Adam and Eve, there's the other education. So you have that if you have to. So it is good that so there's that kind of thinking which talks about the origin of family, private property, and the state.
Sure.
So if you talk of education and the Abrahamic, that's why I've called it the Mosaic, because Moses wrote the 5 books of the Bible. And it is that literature that we use. Now, about marginalization. Marginalization has its own causes, but mainly related to material. Now, if you take it in the terms, in the case of Nigeria and in the case of Egypt, it is true that because of the Islamic influence from Middle East, which came to Egypt, and the original Egyptian religion was not Islamic.
No.
It wasn't. It wasn't Islamic. Islamic just had an upside to the West, which at one point was also countered by the Crusade, which had its own lots of war. The Crusaders were propagating another religion versus the Islamic. It had its own war and many people lost lives. So, for whatever dynamics that took place, Egypt has the majority. Nigeria was a little divided. But this now becomes, in a contemporary sense, a governance system. So it is now the contemporary governance system that should address that issue. And that is why I'm saying part of the addressing is you will know that a particular group is rushing to dominate, not dominate per se, but to dominate so that it controls the resources. So it is incumbent upon the government, it's incumbent upon the state to raise remedies to such issues. In Egypt, of course, as you mentioned, the non-Muslims are few. Few, like you could hear the names that are non-Christians in Muslim, like, you remember Secretary General of UN, Boutros Ghali? Boutros Ghali was a prominent Egyptian. He became Secretary General of, I think, the first African Secretary General of UN. Ghali was not a Muslim. He was an Egyptian, but he was not. And I think to that extent, even his wife was a Jew. You imagine an Egyptian marrying a Jew.
That was
so Boutros Ghali, which is a prominent person in Egypt, possibly one of the most prominent, apart from the freedom fighters, like the earlier leadership, which were freedom fighters.
Sure.
which were very progressive, by the way. This was mentioning in this Pan-African, that people like Abdul Nasser, they were so progressive for the sake of Pan-Africans that in the Ugandan liberation struggle, those who were seeking education and independence would move on foot to go to Egypt.
To Egypt for education.
You remember late Mzee Kajabago?
Yes.
The Kajabago moved on foot through Sudan to go to Egypt. They boarded a plane from Egypt to go to Moscow. And that is why people like the father of General Kale Kayura, Sergesa something, he died in Egypt because they would board a plane from Egypt. So, of course, we had very progressive leadership at the beginning of the Egyptian society, and the help in the liberation of Africa. And most of our liberation fighters would go to Moscow through walking on foot. So the marginalization issue is an issue that needs statecraft, because it is an issue that can be identified. I could say I can thank Uganda about that. It is really not prevalent, especially in the religious sector.
Exactly.
Did you know that Ugandans, and due to the wise leadership of Museveni, we have done a religion to the extent that religion is a non-issue? How? For example, do you know that in a village, if they're assembling in an LCA meeting and they ask somebody to pray, do you think it matters in Uganda whether you pray in Islamic or Christian? You can't do that in Somalia. Try to go to Somalia and say, brothers, let's pray, and you pray in Christian. They'll kill you there and then.
It is also to do with the policies of the respective governments.
Yes.
For example, when you talk of Egypt, we have had a number of engagements where President Sisi has been seen with the religious groups, with the religious organization, has been with his ministers visiting some of this. But immediately after you see him with, and I think we still had footage on that, of the president in the church, then the next thing you are seeing a church burning. Then you are like, and with all those assurances. So I think what you are saying is that it is also incumbent upon the respective government to regulate and provide an environment which is conducive for these groups to settle together. The irony,
just a minute. I agree with you. It is entirely government. For example, small acts that we do as a government of Uganda. For example, when you're in Kololo, you choose that we are going to have a prayer from a Christian bishop and a prayer from the mufti. You know, it's a small thing as that. But did you know that such a small act goes down to Karamoja, to Kisoro, to say, hey, for us it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because even in Kololo we see the bishop praying along with the... and that is why you don't see it an entity. Try to pray in Christian in Somali. You will be killed there and then. Even killed by your brother. It is your brother who will kill you.
For leaders, especially in Africa, is now to demystify the issue of religion, because that's why it starts. Because it does not even hurt one end, one grouping. It goes across. You remember, especially we were talking about Nigeria, when the Boko Haram in 2014 raided the school and took away the girls. Of course, the majority of them were Christians. But you have a family which is Christian but has Muslim relatives or Muslim family members. So I think it is now the African leaders to ensure that religion is not an issue in Africa, so that we look at the bigger enemies, and religion should not be one of them as we wind up. But also that when you look at that in terms of politics, how then does politics play out in these conflicts. I think this is something that we shall be looking at in the next episode of these discussions of the Pan-African Friday. But I will have your closing shot on that, especially as we now go back into your elections as a political party. I think it is always good to work as a family together, as a people, as Ugandans and as Africans.
Now, my honest say, and briefly, is that education is from a no-knowledge to a knowledge. And therefore, getting the knowledge, it's expected to improve your tools, one's tools of analysis. And with that tools of analysis, an educated person is therefore believed to take right course of action. And that is why there's a difference between uneducated and educated. Even the arithmetic that we practice in school, 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 4 is 16, and it's expected in the final analysis to strengthen your thinking capacity and empower you with tools of analysis, so that in any challenging situation, such a person takes the correct decision.
Yes, we're up with our time, and we will continue from there next week. I think we'll have more discussion to do with education, religion, and the religious conflicts on this continent. And of course, as Africans, religion found us here, so it is first us, for ourselves. Let's look at us ourselves as Africans, and then religion and education. And these are the things that we acquire along the way will facilitate us to think and live better lives than we are living today. Thank you so much being with us. Until next week is when we shall be back. Please have the best of the weekend. Be blessed.
You take
Hello, Kampala, Uganda. In response to the national call of strengthening the traffic security, Good Products Group HGO brand has officially launched the Rider Selection Campaign. Registration is now open. Visit www.riders.hgo.com. Complete your registration now for a chance to win exciting prizes, including motorcycles, exclusive HGO gift boxes, and official rider vests, all while promoting safe riding awareness. This is how to participate. Pay the registration fee, invite 3 friends to form a team of 4, and your registration fee will instantly be refunded. Begin your journey of honor today. Don't miss this opportunity. Join the challenge, promote road safety, and become a pioneer rider. For details, visit the official Good Products website at www.hgo.com or call toll-free 0800-335-555 or visit our offices at Kingdom Kampala 3rd floor to register now and win prizes worth millions.
Taxation is a bit complicated, and the only way